Welcome into this week's Weather Hangout. It's so great to see you if you're watching on WTOL 11 Plus, or maybe it's convenient for you to be watching on YouTube. We've got Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers here, along with the team that's going to be joining you for the Weather Hangout today.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
It's not quite as warm outside as it was when we convened last week. Of course, the topic of that Weather Hangout was those 80-plus degree temperatures. Matt, you brought some summer back to the 419, but it's back to reality this week. And love it or hate it, we're at least seeing that spring bloom and some sights of spring this week.
Oh, yeah, definitely seeing it out. I was visiting some of the metro parks earlier this week, and definitely seeing some of those blooms start to peak out just a little bit.
I made a little joke on social media that last week was our 5-day free trial of summer, but now it's expired, and we're back to reality. So we've got to re-enroll in that, and we're actually going to reload for a day that's going to head up to the 80s. If you're joining us this Wednesday or even into Thursday, we've got some 80s before we turn cooler into the weekend. That happens this time of the year, though, John. We get lots of ups and downs that go in all different directions.
Yeah, the weather is very cyclic this time of year, and it's a roller coaster for a reason, but we've settled back into some more typical spring weather this week, and certainly good to see those signs of spring, and lots to look forward to in the coming months.
Yeah, exactly. So we have 1 day free trial this week.
1 day free trial, and you better not miss your enrollment time. You would say that this is probably one of the more extreme months that we experience over the course of the calendar year, considering we're going to go from frosty conditions to record highs in about 36 hours, or at least close to record highs. We get a lot of extremes this time of the year, and frost is one of those extremes that we've felt and continue to see this time of the year, John.
Yeah, that's going to be one of our topics for this week's episode, is what sort of impacts do those fluctuations have on flowers, on gardens, on local agriculture as well, because it confuses the plants just as much as it confuses and perplexes us, and sometimes those ups and downs can cause some issues, especially after the spring bloom. You know, what happens if we get a frost or freeze after the flowers are already budding, and does that cause trouble? So we're going to answer that, and I'll have more in the Climate Friday newsletter as well for more thorough, in-depth breakdown.
And potentially changes, too, over the course of history and when we typically see our last frost and last freeze, which a lot of people are just saying, John, just tell me, am I going to be able to get into the garden anytime soon? Because this is the time of the year
those weeks leading up to Mother's Day are often a wild card, and that's why conventional wisdom tells you just wait until May. April, don't risk it.
Is Mother's Day early this year, I hope?
I hope so.
I hope.
We're getting close at least.
It is. That is typically a good saying, though. We're not clear from frost until Mother's Day, and we'll have more on that in a little bit. But we can actually show you some spring beauty as we kick things off on this week's Weather Hangout. How about this? Could you just imagine scooting over this? Spring has sprung. This is actually drone footage of millions and millions of flowers that are in bloom in Keukenhof, a famous flower garden. Not locally, though. You're going to have to take a trip for this one over to the Netherlands.
Although Holland, Michigan takes runner-up, it's very well manicured if you want to see some flowers nearby. Beautiful, though.
What would it be like to maintain and manicure the grounds time after time?
I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it has to take months and months, even years and years to get a garden like this, at least.
Doesn't look anything like mine.
No.
I can tell you that. I could use some tips on becoming a better green thumb and working on a garden. Great video there.
Yes, beautiful.
Well, our next video, so you may have heard of this, parts of South Florida.
Is that a boat?
Yeah, it's a boat plane. It's a plane. Still starting to clean up after an unprecedented storm dumped upwards to 2 feet of rainfall in a matter of hours. The National Weather Service says up to 25 inches of rain fell near the Fort Lauderdale International Airport.
That's a lot of rain, and of course, flash flooding never lends itself to good results. So certainly amazing to see the power of Mother Nature there.
So over 24 inches of rainfall. To put that in perspective, that is typically about half a year's worth of rain here, or precipitation in Northwest Ohio. Fell in about 24 hours. Some indications are, and there's going to be research on this for most likely weeks and months to come, it was a 1 in 1,000 year flood event, certainly signaling a very catastrophic flooding event that occurred.
Yep, sad to see that video. And we got one more video for you. French Quarter Fest organizers temporarily suspended the event for a few hours while severe weather moved through the area. You can see the rain and the umbrellas. And of course, some severe thunderstorms as well caused the suspension of that at French Quarter.
This is a little, I need
to know more about this.
Why close to home. I mean, the French Quarter Fest is a perfect fest, full of beignets, food, and I just hate to see that right there. It kind of hits close to home to see it kind of getting rained out a little bit, but always one of the biggest fests pretty festivals in New Orleans.
Sure, they can't let the weather ruin all the fun, though.
Oh, no, not at all.
Somebody's got to eat those bananas.
The people down in New Orleans are saying Mardi Gras was just, what, like 6 weeks ago? I need another reason to have a party?
Exactly. We're always partying down there, so.
Well, I like that, and hopefully the weather didn't spoil it for too long. As we look forward, though, we're going to be talking more about something that's going to be flocking into the area, and also John's going to have a breakdown of a little bit more on the frost and on the freeze and where we kind of stand in the current season of that. And Matt, you made an adventure out to the metro parks.
Yes, where some of those birds are starting to flock, at least in those metro parks. So I'll be breaking down some of the best metro parks you can visit around Toledo.
Ooh, I got my favorite already picked out, I think. Stay with us. We're coming right back after this quick fact. We'll see if you get the right answer. Right, 89 degrees set back in the 1940s. And considering we mentioned off the top how extreme the month of April can be, we had frost this morning, 32 degrees. We're going to be very close to record warmth as we go into the afternoon, Thursday, into the mid-80s. Now, our average last frost is going to be out there on May 8th, and that is something that we're going to consider more deeper coming up here with meteorologist John Birchfield. This time of the year, though, as we begin to exit out of that spring thaw, we start to talk more about the migration of our temperatures, but also the migration of birds across Ohio. And this is the time of the year we're getting closer to peak season. It actually starts to begin back in February and March, not necessarily as much up here in northern Ohio. Really begins to peak, though, April into May and even last into June. And our area, of course, one of the focal points in the entire nation and in the world, as the biggest week in American birding takes place right here in northwest Ohio, and we'll have a lot more on that in the coming weeks. Now, the current bird migration, how about we actually throw some numbers your way? Just last night across Ohio, it was estimated there was 42,000 birds that were actively in migration across Ohio. Now, how about Lucas County? If we would just take a pick of a county here, estimated 3,100 birds actively moving and migrating across Lucas County as we head closer to the peak of our migration. So keep that one number in mind, 142,000. Peak migration is expected to be closer to about 292,000 birds during the peak flight, during the peak of the migration season, which will be coming up in our area through late April and into early May. So right at about half that as the conditions begin to warm up. So where are these birds actually migrating? They're generally around 1,800 to about 3,000 feet up into the atmosphere. And that is the altitude for birds that are actively migrating. Now, you may ask, how do we know all this and how can we estimate it? We actually typically use Doppler radar, something that is accustomed or more commonly used to detecting storms, rain, snow, or any type of precipitation, can actually detect biological or environmental factors that are actually moving through the sky. Birds would be one of those things that could be detected by Doppler radar. And of course, the wind impacts that as well. Wind direction out of the northeast as those birds continue to travel would actually tend to slow their advance, and that typical migration moves at about 15 miles per hour. Now, the expected nocturnal migrant in our area, not necessarily a bird expert, but I like to do some bird watching here and there. But the ruby-crowned kinglet, the fox sparrow, the house wren, the blue-winged teal, and very popular, the warbler, also another bird that is going to be coming into the area as we get closer to the peak of our migration. Now, the warmer weather does play a little bit into that. We get one day this week after that summer preview last week that does pop into the 80s, but our next storm system, we're already eyeing that, does bring cooler conditions in, and Very cool weather is expected over the next 10 days. In fact, temperature trend after the 80s, which is going to be out there for Thursday. We do turn considerably cooler into the weekend. We're looking at 40s and 50s, well below average for this time of the year. And it's going to be a slow warming trend into early next week. Low to mid 50s Monday and Tuesday. And a couple days could be close to the 60s as we go toward the end of next week. We've got more coming up about the frost and the freeze, and also a preview of our metro parks. Stay with us after this quick fact.
May 5th, when the biggest week in American birding begins, and not only the birds start to flock, but also the tourists come to the 419 to enjoy the beautiful, colorful, and vibrant spectacle that is the biggest week in birding. Matt will have more coming up in just a minute, but I do want to talk spring frost and freeze, and this is just a sneak peek of what we'll have in the Climate Friday newsletter. If you're not already subscribed, head to WTOL.com/email for the very latest each and every Friday. Now, even though we had that preview of summer last week, it is back to reality this week, and we officially hit a freezing temperature at Toledo Express Airport with a low of 32. Now, generally, in order to have widespread problems for the gardens and crops outside, you need temperatures to dip down to the 20s. However, 32 to 36 is still considered a frosty morning, and we typically see frost through the early May. Now, at the very beginning of this Weather Hangout, we joked around about the fluctuations and the ups and the downs in April and spring weather, and this is something that local farmers know all too well. The term that this is coined as is called false spring. Essentially, that means a freeze that occurs after the spring budding. And this can be problematic because once those flowers and plants leave dormancy, they're a lot more vulnerable once those buds begin to develop during the springtime. Now, climate change may be playing a role in this and causing a shift in the spring bud. There was one study that actually looked at flowers and plants in the continent of Europe, and it found that each and every decade that shifted forward 4.3 days. In other words, budding in the springtime, it's happening earlier and earlier and earlier than it used to, in part due to the milder temperatures we're experiencing both in the winter and in the early spring. And this is a trend that's likely occurring in the United States and will continue to be even more pronounced in the future. Now, why is that problematic? It is problematic because once that budding begins, plants really start to lose their ability to tolerate and deal with freezes. That means that a frost or freeze can be especially detrimental once plants exit dormancy and the spring budding cycle begins. Local farmers know that all too well. 2012 was one of those springs that had a false spring, and after the spring budding occurred, we saw some detrimental frost and freeze that cost a lot of money to area farmers. In fact, in the state of Michigan alone, over $500 million of losses in fruit crops occurred, partly due to the apple crop, which is especially vulnerable after the budding in the springtime. $500 million lost due to that false spring phenomenon. Now, overall, the growing season, or the frost-free time that we get, is increasing. And across the Great Lakes and the Midwest, we are seeing an increase in the number of days that we go without a frost and freeze. Probably not surprising due to the warming trend that has occurred. Overall, we're seeing 9 more days each and every year that we go frost-free, and the growing season as a whole has shifted upward tremendously. Back in the 70s, you can see that line was a lot smaller than it is now, and through the 21st century, we've seen an uptick in the number of days and temperatures above freezing, and the more consecutive days that we go without a frost or freeze, that means the longer the growing season is. That's partly why we're starting to see an earlier and earlier shift to the spring budding. And of course, the false spring phenomenon can be hazardous to those plants once they get their buds on in the springtime. Now, some of the signs of spring also include the birding, and Matt will have more coming up after this weather fun fact.
may have the itch to visit the metro parks after last week's warm weather, and that may return in a few days. I'll be breaking down some of the parks and how you can take advantage of what they'll have to offer this time of year. Check it out. We're still waiting for the spring weather to stay consistent, but you can still make plans to visit a metro park to give you that spring rush you're looking for. I stopped by Swan Creek, where I found wildlife on main display.
Harry's beak is as big as its head.
This is really an exciting time of year for variety, not only weather, but we have birds arriving daily, including warblers, the little colorful songbirds that we are famous for. Walleye migrating up the Maumee River, so we have fishermen from all over the region here. It's like the peak of the fishing season right now. So there's plenty going on in all the metro parks. You want to stay close to home, Swan Creek's a great choice.
And closer to the lakeshore, Carpenter says you'll find water birds like ducks and geese. There are plenty of programs and events for residents to enjoy at all metro parks this spring.
As the weather warms up, you'll see a bigger variety of those as well. So we need a combination of the air and water temperature to reach a certain point to make it safe and comfortable to go kayaking and canoeing. So watch for some of those programs coming up. Our archery park, West Winds, is back open for the season, so you can shoot a static range and 3D targets there. Starting in May, our canal boat season begins, May through October.
The canal experience is at Providence Metro Park in Grand Rapids. In just a few weeks, you can expect all the metro parks around Toledo to be in full operation for spring and summer.
In May, everything is fully open, and you can try out a whole variety of activities on your own or at some of our programs in the 19 metro parks.
Reporting in Toledo, I'm meteorologist Matt Willoughby for WTOL 11.
So I'm missing 3 in my quick count.
19.
It's wonderful. I mean, what a gem we have here in our metro parks. Great to be out there to enjoy it. If you're going to be doing birding, if you're running, John, you like to run through many of them as well.
Oh, yeah, and the list keeps on growing. There's been so much new development within the metro parks Toledo, and it's cool to see that expansion. Even right here in our backyard in downtown Toledo, we can enjoy the metro parks right in the urban city of Toledo.
Yeah, I truly can't wait to see the renovations and everything that Glass City Metro Park will have to offer.
Yeah. You've motivated us, Matt, to get out there and to see all 19, and no excuse with the better weather to come. Of course, coming weeks and months is when things really kind of come into full bloom, and we get into the spring and summer season. We're all looking forward to that.
Yes, exactly. Especially going to be exciting once we finally get the warmer weather to stay a little bit more consistent.
And that's the thing about it. It's not consistent right now. So enjoy it whenever you are watching this Weather Hangout. We appreciate your time this week. This, again, is our WTOL 11 weekly Weather Hangout. If you're joining us on YouTube, we appreciate that, or streaming on WTOL 11 Plus. Till next week, have a great one.